Hey everyone, welcome. I would love to share an audio blog with you today. I wrote this blog for my website and I've been trying to put the blogs out on audio now because I realise so many people like to listen rather than read. So today I'm going to bring this audio blog to you. It's on how do you know you share a soul with another, and this is a question that a lot of people ask. I know I've had this question asked to me many times over the years, and especially as a coach when I'm coaching other divine feminines and masculines and just people that come across my path. You know, Spirit has a beautiful way, the universe, of putting people in my path that have met these connections and they just need some guidance as well. So, and that's kind of the most popular question, like how do you know you share a soul with another? And this is something I was actually guided to write by my higher self. Said to me last night, do you realise so many people ask this question? And I said, yeah, and I don't really understand how they do, but I'm going to explain that as well in here, why it's just different for everybody. So I'm going to proceed now. How do you know you share a soul with another? And I want to say it's a question asked by many, and those that share the experience will probably all have their own way of explaining how they know. But I wanted to share here a little of mine. So again, just remember, everyone will perhaps have their own way of knowing. Every unique pair are different, obviously. So I describe in detail in the last chapter of my book, chapter 24, what it felt like for me coming face to face when we first met. So you may want to read that as well. It was all of those things in that chapter, plus the recognition within my soul of his energy. That was the initial explosion feeling. Then it was knowing his voice, his face, his eyes, and thinking, where have we met before? However, the strongest energy that stood out the most above all was he was home for me. You know, completely and utterly he felt like home. And I felt this unquestionable knowing he belonged in my house with me. It was quite bizarre, like my soul was showing me something so profound. It actually felt extremely out of alignment when he would leave, and I struggled to figure out why I felt this. I guess it was somewhat confusing because I was trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together. I talked in my book about feeling I had a missing piece my whole life, and what I was feeling and knowing in my soul was that he was it. I knew without a doubt he felt like my perfect match, and I knew he was my perfect match. I had no recollection of twin flames or twin souls or any label you want to give these soul connections at this time. I had only heard of soulmates, but even then I knew it was different. I now see I was being prepared when young for when I would meet him in this physical world. Yet it took me a little while to piece it all together. It was like a million lightning bolts for me that I was trying to keep secret until I figured it out. Maybe I should have just allowed my heart to step up and relax instead of using logic and ego, which I did. Use logic and ego too much, and then my ego and soul started the dance that we all know. For all the times my ego tried to step in to derail me, my soul was stronger with the knowing. I still ran though from the intense feeling of this love out of fear, and I did that on and off for some time. Why do we run? We run because we know the truth. We are running from ourselves in truth. But I didn't know that at the same time either. You know, so we run because we know, and we know that that's our truth. I just had a deep soul knowing that we were one, and that he could see right through me from the inside out. It scared me to feel that someone knew me better than I knew myself, and looking into his eyes was beyond beautiful, but so dynamic. I had a dynamic in a great way, but I had to turn away because he would stare at me and hold his stare, but I couldn't because it was so intense. Everything was, I could see everything. Looking into his eyes, I was seeing his beauty, his light, which was amazing. And it was. He was just such a light. But it also showed me my soul and all my unhealed wounds inside. It was reflecting that to me. Many call this our shadow side or our darkness. I was facing myself full on and everything was coming up for me. When I looked into his eyes, I felt him read me so nakedly, where there was nowhere to hide. I had hid my true self from many my whole life. Now I had nowhere to hide any part of myself. It was raw and open, and I would freeze a lot, not to know what to do. I tried to shut myself down and hide my heart, and I just, used to jump into my masculine energy a lot to cover up. I mostly defaulted to my masculine energy, like a lot of other women do, when I didn't want to expose or reveal my vulnerability. I thought this was working for a while. Mind you, I didn't really have a full awareness that I was doing this, as I had done this most of my life, so it was just kind of natural that I did default to this. It wasn't until years later I realised that, regardless, he still saw everything anyway. I could always feel that no matter how I was acting, he could really see the real me. At the same time, and when I say how I was acting, I mean from ego, if I was in fear, if I was scared of something, or if I didn't know what to do or say, or, if something was coming up for me, I kind of could feel that he knew something was going on. So that's what I mean by that. At the same time, my heart and soul were trying to guide me, but I wasn't really listening. I wanted to, but I was just out of fear. I didn't listen. I'd never loved another so deep, felt another so deep, and I'd never felt a love like this before in the human form. To share an energy, soul, with another is exclusive, so you feel it within. It's not a soul connection where you are just, vibrating at the same frequency, and when you are, that invites a person in, that matches, like most people talk about this. It's not the same. This was different, and I knew in my soul not many people had this. It was pure. And for us to be experiencing anything other than our pure soul was so painful for me. I can write about a million different things I remember from our times together over the years that kept showing me and validating how I knew, which was lovely. But even without those things, honestly, you just know. And I just wanted to say that when I said about us, anything other than our pure soul was painful to me, I just mean by anything other than being in our truth of our love and being ourselves. That's our pure soul. And as much as all those other amazing, insightful and incredible things were happening, we experience in the physical, the true way to know really is what you feel. Feeling is the language of the soul, what you feel deep in your heart and what your soul recognises. So when people used to say to me they weren't sure if someone was their true twin, I couldn't understand that. I'm not saying it may not be different for another, the way they feel it. I'm not here to judge. However, I'm inclined to say that if you have to ask, then it's possibly a no. or unless it can be that you are still in ego and fear of going deeper into yourself. Like if you're maybe in the initial stages of doing your inner child work, your shadow work. But for me, there was never any question. I don't know, like even when I hadn't done that right at the start, when I was unconscious to it all, I just knew, and I just didn't understand the concept of what was going on or how to process it. I was trying to figure it out from a conditioned 3D relationship, but that wasn't working either. And of course, when I found out about these soul connections and how they work, I could understand why that didn't work. I was pretty clueless, though, at how to navigate the love because I wasn't being my authentic self. Even after reading and hearing many others talk about these connections, I still felt ours was kind of different. And so in 2015, I felt I had ascended enough in my inner growth to ask my higher to reveal the truth of exactly who we are. As I already knew we resided in the high angelic realms, I had remembered. And when I say, what I mean by is I knew I'd felt I'd ascended enough to hear it, it's because often, depending on where we are in our growth, our higher crew and divine helpers, they won't tell us information if they think we're still going to react from ego, or if we're not going to be able to cope with that, or we're going to run or whatever. So I just knew intuitively that each time as I went along on my growth, I was ready to hear more. It wasn't about the twin aspect. I knew all that, but I was actually ready to understand more about who we were and our mission and all of that sort of jazz. So this is when our higher divine crew from Christ Consciousness Source Light, the divine beings that were contracted to help us on our path of mission and union, showed me exactly who we were and why I felt we were a little different to some others talking about this love. And please know I'm not saying that, that others don't have this deeper one either, but it's just there's a lot out there that sort of feel they're on these twin flame paths, and it's just more, which is lovely too, but it's a higher soulmate, primary soulmate connection. So it's very different when you actually have that same energy soul with that person. So this is when I was shown through visual and diagram, a diagram that I drew. So I can't draw for nuts, but my soul took over my hand that day to draw, and I just provided the tool. I drew the complete creation of souls from God consciousness energy and where twins fit in. This is when I was also told we were originals. And when I asked what that was, they said we were from the highest soul group, and that there was only a certain amount of pairs here on Earth. And I won't go into this here because I've mentioned it in other videos, but I was then shown why it feels different, like why I felt different about it. So as I said, I won't get into it here because it's quite long, but maybe that's for another blog. But also perhaps this is why I just had such a deep knowing within, because I felt that it was kind of on a subconscious level, I guess, but it also was kind of a conscious level that I just remembered that we were kind of different to many others as well. So your soul and spirit is energy, and that energy is also in them. Your soul is in you and in them as the masculine and feminine, the electric and magnetic. And again, this is for same-sex twins as well. It doesn't matter, despite the science of all this, which I had no idea about, despite anything you read or listen to, the way you truly know is this deep soul love and recognition. A connection, yes, but I even feel for me it's deeper than a connection, because the word connection for me represents a connection to a part that is not within you, something that is separate from you. And for me, it felt like he was already in me. It wasn't something I had to connect to, if that makes sense. I don't really know how to explain this any other way than that way. I had never thought about telepathy with another human. I had it growing up with him in spirit, of course, I guess you could say, but never had experienced it with another until I met him. Then suddenly I was hearing his voice in my head, whether we were together or not. I could stand in front of him and have a conversation by telepathy without even speaking. This was my experience, so I'm not sure if it was his, and I'm not saying it has to be yours or anyone else's, but this was my experience. But I could hear him speaking to me in his head before he spoke the words, or even if he didn't end up speaking those words. And then he would look at me like he knew I understood what he was going to say or saying anyway, or would say, I guess. It was really, I found it very interesting, and sometimes I already answered what I knew he was going to ask before he asked it. Even in our ego, this was happening. So I guess imagine if we weren't in our ego, like how powerful that telepathy would be. Because, we were both, probably me more than him, coming from ego or, still with some fears and not as transparent, but pretty much both of us holding back and coming from ego in many ways. And we still, my experience, I'm not sure about him, I've never asked him. You may have asked your Divine One, but so I have to just speak from me, but it was very powerful for me, and that was my experience. And as I said, I'd never experienced that from another physical being, and I guess I grew up very conscious. If anyone's read my book, they'll know that I always remained connected, and I was connected and had the telepathy that way with him travelling in spirit form, and I was always, as a young child, connected to the spirit realm, and angels and whatnot. But I'd never experienced telepathy with another physical human before, and it just happened, like, straight away. So I saw the beautiful love and divine being of light he was, that I guess we couldn't see in ourselves. Again, I don't know if he saw that in me, but I could see that he didn't see that in himself. I noticed as time went on, we had loads of similarities in many different ways, huge ways. Then there was, sitting and talking for hours, feeling like time stood still. When he spoke, my body felt like it was vibrating to his tone, his sound, that frequency. Same with his touch, our eyes to the soul, feeling each other through our soul. It's really hard for me to describe in deeper how I felt that, but that's the best way I guess I can describe it with words. Again, I could go on with many different physical ways this played out, but underneath all that, the knowing is through feeling, not your head, not logic. It was an innate knowing of the deepest level for me, which is why it was so intense, so magically beautiful, but intense still. And I did let my ego take over many times, blocking my heart unconsciously out of fear. Fear of knowing that he could see me in every way, ways I didn't want to face myself. Never did I ever wish to not be on this journey, as difficult as it has been at times. In my deepest darkness, I still saw a shining light that was he. He was my light that led me out of my darkness. Many get lost in the theory also that twins are only here to heal each other that way and not necessarily be in union. But that's just the first steps. The ultimate is a grander picture that really most don't understand, because they're mostly still fighting their ego and deeper fears. And it is a gradual step. So, and you see that, like, once they get through different layers, and of course it's coming into that deeper self-love and doing all that, like, inner work of your self-love. And, you know, I do see a lot of divine feminine kind of jump on that wagon of, oh, we're just here to, because they're still needing to go deeper into facing, because they're in fear that if they completely let go and release, that, you know, it's hard for them to release that and understand and still be in unconditional love with all of that, if you know what I mean. So there is a grander picture that most, you know, maybe haven't got to yet or understand. And I shouldn't say most, maybe generalising, but there's still a few. But there's no one else in this physical world with you that can heal you in every way and love you like your divine other. They are you. I can't really explain it in more simple terms, but honestly, some people really have a hard time understanding this. When you understand your soul is energy and it's in two different forms of a physical body, you get the deeper picture. You know, it's deep. It's a deeper picture when you can see it from that higher, much higher perspective. As I said, it's levels of that growth. When it comes to how it feels being together, people write about feeling totally relaxed, transparent, and in their truth when they are together in the physical, which is lovely. And well, for me, it felt a bit like I was in a trance, a combination of complete bliss, transparency, and pure heaven. But for me, sometimes it was also coupled with fear and intense uncomfortableness, because he was mirroring my darkness, and as yet I hadn't healed those parts that he was mirroring. And so those times he was reflecting parts of me that I had not then healed, it raised my ego. I would say most of the time he was more vulnerable and open, and I could see he was awakened and intuitive, very wise. So it did trigger my unconscious wounds and awareness. Yet, despite this, I didn't want to leave or run whilst this happened. I was prepared to stay and work through it with him. I always only ran when we were not together physically, not seeing each other physically. But for me, when we were face to face, I would have stayed there forever and worked through things. But yes, as uncomfortable as it was, knowing he was looking into my soul, seeing all my fears, insecurities, my flaws and ego responses, but yet I did yearn to open my heart to him in those moments, in those ways, and many moments. I yearned for our deep and meaningful conversations. I just loved them. He was like my best friend, and on these occasions where I had an awareness, I was able to share myself. At other times, I didn't have the awareness that I was shut down or that my heart wasn't open to receiving him. So I just wanted to say that, you know, there were definitely times I was being myself, but I wasn't as open and transparent as I could have been. I still had fears, and I still had blocks inside, and there were still things that I was in fear of him seeing, you know, inside of me, because when we all have that unworthiness and we don't think we're this beautiful, shining, divine being at that point, and we're looking at them and we're seeing that they're this beautiful, despite they've still got all the same stuff going on. I realise that, like, they've still got, you know, things that they're working through, and they've got their own, like we feel, their own fears and insecurities and flaws, and, you know, that's the beauty of it all. It's actually just being there for each other to help each other work through that. And you know, I know it's rare that people can really do that consistently. Like, a lot have to go into that physical separation so that they're not facing the mirror every second of the day. But I just knew for me that I could have got through that way. And you know, because life's not about just being perfect all the time. Like, it's really about just being open, transparent, vulnerable, sharing how you feel, not being scared, how to share how you feel, all of that, and be your true self. But often in those moments when we don't perhaps even know or have the awareness of being our deep, authentic, true self, that's what we don't realise often, that we're shutting down our heart as well. So I was crippled in fear of showing my true self to him, for fear of rejection, really, which I know many of us feminine do have these core wounds. I was afraid to be vulnerable and transparent, and I thought if he didn't like what he saw, he wouldn't come back. It was a fear of losing him after us finding each other. And at that point, I hadn't gone deeper into my self-love to fill myself up first, to do my inner work, to unconditional love. So, you know, fears still did creep in. And as we know, when you do that inner work for yourself and you come back to the self, to really working on being in your sovereignty, your divine essence, and unconditional love, you know, with both of you, and that way you don't then fear of losing. You know, you don't feel that the separation the same. You don't feel the pain. You don't feel all of that, and so then you don't have that fear, those fears, and it's working through that, as we know. So could I lie down on the bed and just be raw with him, be open, blurt out my feelings, share my deep love for him, say things like, I don't know what's happening here, but my soul is walking this path with you? Could I share these inner, deepest feelings that I had about us, as much as I wanted to? I never did. I was too afraid. I did many times, not face to face, but I just at that point couldn't do it. I still had more healing to do, more, to clear out those fears. But could I share my intimate, deepest moments or feelings of other things that had happened in my life? Absolutely. Like I said, he was like my best friend as well, so I feel like I could tell him anything about myself that had happened to me. But when it came to me sharing how I felt with him, I guess my fear was that he wouldn't want to hear, and he would, run away because I still had a fear. So, but to look into his eyes and tell him how much I loved him was also looking into my eyes and telling myself how much I loved me. And I didn't love me, so I couldn't do it. I later learned to love myself and then discovered not loving myself was the root of all my darkness. Not loving or choosing myself on the deepest of levels, choosing my soul over everything else, choosing my light and power, my divine essence, my authentic self. There were about 1,000,000 times I wanted to look into his eyes and tell him how I felt. But every time I was stunned by his beauty, his love and his light, and I just didn't do it. I guess the fear took over then. So why was it so hard? Because I didn't love myself. I didn't think I was worthy. When you're still running old programs of unworthiness, lack of self-love, fears, self-doubt, shame, guilt, those old programs keep you in loops, holding us back. However, there were times I could expose myself more, being transparent, and open my heart. And part of those times was during our beautiful sexual times. So, I mean, there were other times I could do that too, but our beautiful sexual times, intimacy to me felt like his energy took over, and I felt very beautifully safe and protected, and I could trust him. And when I'm saying like this, I mean to completely open myself, and then I still wasn't opening myself to the depths I could have, but I was opening myself to the depths of the healing I'd done. So for me, as I see it, is that we open when we're in these intimate moments, we open ourselves to the depths of the work we've done, basically. So, yeah. So the energy took over, I felt, and he navigated the magic, and it happened naturally. So everything opened within us as we shared ourselves more vulnerable than ever. And he was the same. I could feel in his energy that when we were intimate, he was more open, more, just all those things I said, just beautiful. As I said, I trusted him completely with every part of my sacred body and soul. Our hearts took the driver's seat in those moments. There's something about being naked in body that opens up, being naked in soul, when you are connected in this magical love, aligned with your soul. It's like you can look at each other in those moments, in each other's eyes, and, and not lie or not run or be in fear or be in ego, but your heart takes over, and in an instant there is no denial. There is nothing but like pure bliss, and it's like you can relax and even laugh and just share, it's like you're sharing each other's bodies with each other on such a deeper level, and you just open your heart to the love. They say a woman during sex not only opens her body, but she opens herself more vulnerable in ways the man may not realise. I personally think, as a woman, this depends on the connection and love the two have between them. I've seen many women, myself included, that are in their masculine energy, and they're not open at all with men. They're just, they might be enjoying it, but it doesn't mean they're open. It's just at that physical level. And but whilst I've also seen men that can be in their feminine energy and feeling from their heart and soul. For me, this was when I could really open, as I explained myself, more vulnerable, and release any fear. I didn't have any fear coming up at all, and I could fully let myself go. If the masculine is in alignment with his soul, and this is what I wanted to share, that some men don't realise that, and I know this is kind of common knowledge out there now, but a lot of men don't realise that this is where a woman really gives herself to the man in more ways than one, like in many different ways, because to her, her body is sacred, and her heart and her soul, and if she has got that shut down, this is where it'll help herself to open. So for me, I could even go more vulnerable and deeper, and I could fully let myself go. So if the masculine is in alignment with his soul, his heart, and the love, he will feel her every move, every breath, touch, her energy flowing through her. He will feel her inside during her ecstasy bliss. He will be guided by her energy, not her words. And if he's open and sensitive to feeling her at his deepest heart core, then he will help her to feel herself deeper than she's ever felt before. And this is what happens, that the male can help the female heal because that way. And, there's ways, obviously, the female helps the male heal, but I'm talking about in their bodies. But the male, the masculine in the masculine body, male body, can help the female heal through these deeper sacred sexuality, intimacy moments that they share. So, and within these soul connections, this goes deeper as their chakras, their energy portal points, and soul are aligned. With twins, their chakras are connected. So this is sacred sexuality, and between the divine pair, this will be felt on the deepest levels. The deeper you find yourself, the deeper you will find and feel your divine counterpart. And the deeper you will allow that love to penetrate every cell of your being in pure unconditional love, pure bliss, pure transparency, truth, and opening your body, your mind, and your heart and your soul to each other. So that's the deeper sacred sexuality. And I just want to say that again, the deeper you allow that love to penetrate every cell of your being in pure unconditional love, pure bliss, pure transparency, truth, and opening your body, mind, and heart and soul to each other. And the deeper you find yourself is the deeper you will find and feel your divine counterpart. When people ask me, how do you know he is your soul partner? I find myself saying, you just know. I just always find myself saying that. Because to fully explain something that is not felt by most in this human world is impossible. Like this love doesn't match any human structured words. How do you express divine pure love unless you have the privilege to feel it yourself? You most likely won't understand. So thank you for listening, and I hope that helped. And just remember, though, that sorry, I've just eaten and it's it's coming up. Just remember that this is my experience and my share, and please don't listen to this and think, oh my God, I don't feel that, and so, is he mine? Or don't doubt yourself like that, because everyone has different ways that they just know for sure. And you'll find, most people that are in these true soul connections will just say, like I said, well, you just know. And then, they'll go into different ways of knowing. And so some of you out there might listen to this and totally resonate and say, oh my God, I get all of that, that's how I feel. And then others might say, well, I didn't feel like that, or, so don't worry, because you'll just know. And some of these, and we're all different and unique, and, my experiences are different and unique too. And from what I experienced as a child, that's enabled me to feel these different ways. And so, and again, about the sacred sexuality, I just wanted to say, and that's why I went over it, to say that the deeper you find yourself, the deeper you'll find and feel your divine counterpart, and also feel it in yourself. So if you're listening to that and you're thinking, oh, that's not how it is for me, or whatever, or why don't I feel like that, just know that everyone is different, because it goes in levels. So it's usually whatever level of growth or healing work you've done. So, obviously that's as deep as you can go when you're with your divine counterpart. And you might find that if you are in separation physically and then you've come back together and then separated, because a lot of twins do that back and forth over the years, or over time. I hope it hasn't been years for you, but over time, then you'll find that each time you've done more work, then you'll feel the sacred sexuality deeper again. So it's really all about you and going deeper within you, and doing that work as to how then deep you can feel everything else on those deeper levels, and how completely balanced, your chakras are, and etc. So it may not appear that it's going to happen like that, for you straight off, and that's okay. Don't get all worried about it or anything like that. So this is just my experiences. And but yeah, so I hope that share helped, and thank you for listening, and much love to you all, and take care. Bye.